A decade has passed since mysterious gates appeared across the entire world, releasing monsters and beasts that surpassed the wildest imaginations of humanity. Yet during that same global event, the Awakened began to emerge. These were superhumans gifted with incredible abilities. These awakened individuals became hunters, and the monstrous invaders became their designated prey. Society learned that together, these new heroes could overcome any threat. This is all a grand and amazing story, but why should any of it matter to him? His name is Kongsheng, and he is simply a loser attending Awakened Specialization High School. His own ability is one that others would label amazing, but for him, it has been a personal hell. It is exoskeleton manifestation. Although he can cover his skin with a protective shell, the process causes him such extreme pain that he can barely hold onto his consciousness, making his situation worse. After the exoskeleton vanishes, it leaves behind disgusting scars all over his body, serving as constant reminders of what he has been forced to endure. Bullies at his school attack and laugh at him without any remorse or concern for consequences. The teachers and the school's core administration cannot do anything to stop it. These bastards are all S-rank awakened who receive very special treatment from the government itself. The sole reason Jiang endures all of this pain is because of his mother, who runs a small food shop. His father died when Jiang was only 5 years old. Whenever she asks him how school is going, he tells her it is fine because he can become a hunter if he manages to graduate. This is why he endures the torment, even though he will likely only be a C-rank hunter due to his abilities' limitations. His income will certainly be small, but it would be enough for them to live somewhere better. All he truly wants is to see his mother finally rest and stop working herself so hard for the both of them. The 15th of the month was his mother's birthday, a special occasion he looked forward to. That was what he thought, at least, until the fuckers from his school beat his mother into a permanent vegetative state. Everyone claims it was an accident, including his own lawyer. The official story is that they coincidentally came to her restaurant and began harassing her. The white-haired bastard promised her diamonds if she would sit next to them. When his mother pulled her hand away, she accidentally tipped his phone onto the floor. Before she could even ask how to repay him for the damage, he immediately impaled her body with his sharp spikes. They did not stop their assault there. Jiang knows the truth. He knows exactly how these fuckers operate. This was not any coincidence, nor was it a simple loss of control fueled by their abilities. It was a deliberate act by a bunch of demons who had taken the only thing he cared about in this world. Later that same day, while the bullies were out on a monster hunt, the one with purple hair voiced a concern. He wondered if it was acceptable that they had beaten that lady to within an inch of her life. What would happen if she actually died from her injuries? The main bully emerged from a portal and told him to stop worrying. He stated that they were both young enough to be protected by the law and were also S-ranked awakened, a protected class. He then asked if the purple-haired boy honestly believed this was the first time he had done something like this. Suddenly, Jiang appeared, demanding to know why they had done it. He approached them slowly, but they could not hear his low, strained words, which prompted Jiang to scream, "Why did you torture my mother?" The main bully feigned ignorance, claiming he did not know the woman was Jiang's mother. He commented that she had looked quite young despite being the mother of such a loser. He then impaled Jiang with a diamond spike and remarked that he had almost flirted with her, stating what a personal disaster that would have been. Jiang found a newfound resolve and did not care about the spike in his chest. He gripped it tightly and pulled it out, allowing the painful exoskeleton to take over his body. He did not want to give up on his revenge. This defiance prompted the main bully to summon a dozen more spikes, skewering Jiang's body like a fish. He mocked him, asking who he thought he was, charging at them as if he could accomplish something. He sneered, asking if Jiang had forgotten he was just a loser. Surprisingly, Jiang continued to move. Even though he looked like a lost spirit, he was adamant about his revenge and kept moving forward. Since he was so adamant, the main bully told his friend Thor to just zap him. With one mighty look, Thor struck Jiang with extremely powerful lightning, which sent him crashing to the ground, presumably dead. Believing they had dealt with him, the bullies began to get on their merry way. But Jiang suddenly grabbed the main bully's leg, asking where he thought he was going. The main bully had finally had enough. He protected his fist with solid diamond and began bashing Jiang's head into the ground over and over again. He screamed that if Jiang was so fucking mad, he should have been there to protect his worthless mother himself, asking why he was getting mad at him instead. Even though these brutal punches knocked most of Jiang's teeth out, he still responded by biting down on the diamond-hard fist, a final act of defiance to show he would not let this matter go no matter what. Suddenly, the bullies saw something form in front of them, a blood gate. Thor thought they should report it immediately, but the main bully told him not to, as he had just come up with a brilliant idea. Jiang tried to get up, but his body was failing him, which allowed the main bully to send him flying directly into the blood gate. Before disappearing into the crimson void, Jiang vowed on his very soul that he would kill them all. He swore he would make every one of them suffer just as they had made his mother suffer. The main bully mockingly told him to try, if he could even get out, that is. Jiang hit the ground inside the gate quite harshly, but that was not his main concern. A blood gate is a phenomenon where a standard gate turns blood red and no monsters ever emerge from it. Not much else is known about them. The reason for this lack of knowledge is simple. If anyone enters a blood gate, they do not come out alive. Inside, thousands of monsters and freaks immediately circled around Jiang, ready to rip his tender flesh apart. They got busy right away, and Jiang experienced a fate worse than death. He could feel every part of his body being cut up, chewed, and mauled. Even his eyes were not safe. The pain was so profound that it persisted even when he was reduced to nothing but bone, refusing to allow him the release of death. Blood gates remain a mystery, but new research has proven that those who enter them become monsters themselves. With no warning, Jiang began to regenerate from a single piece of his skull. His entire body was rebuilt from flesh, and the immense mana inside the gate overtook his being. This was another extremely painful process, but Jiang did not care. The human parts of him still remembered everything. When he thought of his mother, the memories of the pain he and she had suffered because of those bastards came flooding back. It infuriated him so much that he began to drool like a rabid dog. This sheer hatred and sorrow fueled his transformation, taking him even further. Along with the burning memory of that bastard being alive, Jiang went beyond a normal transformation and smashed the ground beneath him with newfound power. This act grabbed the attention of the beasts who thought they were done with him. But Jiang had come back from the dead, driven solely by revenge. The beasts immediately rushed him again. This time, however, Jiang was able to defend himself and take on these lost souls, fighting relentlessly in order to get out of that hell. Time passed. On a live important TV broadcast, 3 S-ranked hunters were being interviewed. They were famous for their kindness and were known to do volunteer work often. This group was, of course, the bullies. The main bully was saying that they still felt the same way even now, that they found joy in helping people. The interviewer then asked him about the outrageous incident from 5 years ago where he had severely injured an innocent civilian. The bully started letting out crocodile tears, claiming that was his close friend's mom, that he was just a student at the time, and because he could not control his abilities, something horrible had happened. He claimed he had apologized dearly but had not been able to get in touch with that friend since then. He expressed a hope that he could apologize once again. Suddenly, the door in front of him slammed open and flew straight into his face. He managed to block it, his face now brandishing its usual cold expression. Everyone in the studio ran away in terror as they saw the monster that had entered. Before the bully could do a single thing, Jiang flew towards him with a punch that could not be blocked. Inside the hell of the Bloodgate, Jiang had fought for years, or what he perceived as years. He had lost all passage of time as he slashed through countless beasts until he finally got out. Now he was there for his revenge. The main bully was knocked out before the other two could even realize what was happening. Jiang still remembered how he had been mocked to try and get out, but he had actually gotten out, and now they were all fucking dead. Surprisingly, the main bully was somehow still conscious and told his two friends to kill Jiang quickly. Thor struck Jiang with lightning the same way he had in the past, but this time Jiang was not even fazed by the attack. He responded by slashing Thor's head clean off, which shocked the remaining bullies. They really should not have been surprised. Jiang, however, had only come for his revenge. The other bully used his dirt abilities on Jiang, who allowed it to happen. Soon, Jiang was engulfed in a coffin of dirt. But he immediately broke out, grabbed the bastard's jaw, and with one swift motion, tore it completely off. This left the bully wriggling on the ground like the worm he was. The pathetic sight annoyed Jiang, so he shut him up permanently with 2 quick slashes. This momentary distraction allowed the main bully to punch Jiang right in the face before he could fully turn around. But to his shock, cracks formed in his diamond fist because of the impact. Seeing this, he planned to eliminate Jiang for good. He summoned thousands of diamond spikes and launched them all directly at Jiang, mimicking his past attack on a much larger scale. This time, however, Jiang was not the little boy he used to be. He was a demon sent from the fiery pits of hell, adamant on revenge. The main bully knew it was not over. He covered the upper half of his body in diamond and began pummeling Jiang again and again, once more mimicking their past encounter. Jiang, in a mirror of his past defiance, caught the diamond fist in his mouth. This gave him enough leverage to strike the bully straight in the chest. He continued to bite down on the fist as he attacked, and the bully became truly horrified. In a desperate move, the bully summoned a gigantic diamond spike and successfully impaled Jiang with it, but at the sacrifice of his own arm, which was torn off. He tried to escape as quickly as possible, but he was suddenly impaled from behind by one of his own spikes, which Jiang now controlled. Jiang closed in with a few more spikes in his hand. The bully screamed at him like a frightened child, begging him to get away and to leave him alone. But that was the last idea in Jiang's mind. He began torturing the bully with his own spikes, forcing him to experience a fraction of the daily torment Jiang had endured because of him. The bully, broken and sobbing, asked who he was and why he was doing something so horrible to him. In response, Jiang ripped the bone exoskeleton from his own face. The bully remembered, now he knew, they had always used to play around with him in high school. He was that worm. Jiang felt it was time to end it. He started beating the bully with every single ounce of rage he had within him, until he finally impaled the bully's mouth with the blade on his hand, ending his life. All of them had suffered now, some more than others, but Jiang's revenge was finally complete. Before all of this had happened, he had visited his mother and was distraught to see that she was still in the same condition as before, not a bit better. He had achieved his purpose. Yet an all-consuming fury continued to burn within him, a fire that his recent vengeance had failed to extinguish. Just prior to these events, in the very same mountainous region where he had once vanished, a new gate had materialized. A team of hunters was inside, efficiently dispatching the monsters within. They all offered their congratulations to the party's healer, a newcomer to their group for whom this dungeon was a first experience. The men were genuinely appreciative of her support and sought to show their gratitude in a different, more sinister manner. They lived by the vile creed that whatever occurs within a gate remains there, and so they conspired to have their way with her, to force their twisted fun upon her until the time came to leave. It was at that precise moment a man's head was severed from his shoulders, sent flying through the air. The others whirled around, their eyes wide with terror, and found themselves staring into the visage of malice itself. In a panic, they began spamming a barrage of attacks, desperate to bring this final monster down. Their assaults were useless. Jiang was entirely unfazed. One hunter, a blade master, lunged forward to cut him down, only for his own weapon to shatter on impact. In the same motion, Jiang cleanly severed the blade master's head. The two remaining hunters were so utterly paralyzed by primal fear they could not react, allowing Jiang to cut them both down to size with brutal efficiency. He then turned his attention to the woman, his gaze resting on her with cold apathy. For a fleeting second, she believed this was an act of mercy, that he was her savior. That hope died as he removed her head just as he had the others. He had no time for such distractions, no time for the concept of mercy. The raw, unbridled anger that now constituted his entire being was his only driver, a truth emphasized by the cold rain beginning to fall on his face. He stood immobilized, unsure of what he was even supposed to feel in the aftermath. Suddenly, a voice from behind broke the silence, asking how it felt to have finally exacted his revenge. He spun around, demanding to know who was there. The woman introduced herself as Lee Yum, the head of the Korean Hunter Association. Jiang, immediately suspicious, asked how she knew of him. She explained that her organization specialized in monitoring and managing everyone who enters a blood gate. It was approximately 5 years ago that he had entered one, was it not? This revelation ignited his rage, and he rushed forward to eliminate her. But she suddenly declared with absolute clarity that his mother could be revived. The statement was so shocking that Jiang deliberately diverted his attack, the force of it creating a massive blast in the earth just behind her. Yum continued unfazed, explaining that his mother could indeed be brought out of her comatose state, but only with her assistance. After all, she was the only S-ranked healer in the entire world. Jiang, his voice a low growl, demanded to know how he could possibly trust her. Yum countered by revealing she had already performed services for him. She posed a simple, pointed question. While he was trapped within that bloodgate, who did he think had provided and paid for his mother's care? It certainly was not the public hospital, which lacked both the sufficient funds and the advanced medical equipment required to sustain a patient in a persistent vegetative state. Cornered by her logic, Jiang asked what she wanted from him. Her answer was deceptively simple. Yum proceeded to outline the new global reality. Hunters as a class had grown too powerful for the world's old structures to contain. Human-made weapons had lost all relevance and potency when measured against the might of top-tier hunters, some of whom possessed power surpassing that of nuclear weapons. This very strength had led to the subjugation of most monsters emerging from the gates. However, a critical problem remained. The gates themselves had not vanished. These gates were all interconnected, forming a new, unpredictable network of passageways that completely ignored traditional national borders and sovereignty. Certain nations were now exploiting this phenomenon to wage a new kind of covert war, specifically targeting the hunters of rival countries. The fragile and tense peace that had held until now was shattered. All the world's major powers had effectively become enemies in this shadow conflict. However, she revealed, Korea faced a critical shortage of hunter strength. This left them unable to block the ongoing incursions of Japanese hunters who operated on Korean soil with impunity. The dilemma was strategic. A direct response using their national hunters would draw excessive global attention and risk triggering an all-out war for which they were not prepared. Therefore, they needed his help. In exchange, she vowed to restore his mother to life, to full consciousness. All he had to do was become the monster they required, to embrace the thing he already was, and unleash that power upon Japan. Across the sea, in the Prime Minister's office in Japan, the nation's leader, Ryuzaki Judo, summoned his Minister of Defense. He demanded to know why all of their elite hunters were currently unreachable. The minister, his head bowed in deference, apologized profusely, accepting full responsibility for the situation and vowing to investigate immediately. This minister was also Japan's #1 hunter, the formidable Ikasai Kagaru. After departing the office, Kagaru instructed his assistant to prepare his sword and to do so swiftly. She ventured to ask, at the risk of sounding rude, if he truly intended to go alone. He confirmed this with a silent nod. Pressing further, she explained that the hunters sent before him were all elites. Why would he not form a proper team for backup? Kagaru slowly turned his head, his expression icy, and posed a single, telling question in response. Did he look like the type of person who needed such things? He soon arrived at the location of the disappearances. The scattered enemies he encountered at the periphery were far too weak to have defeated the team they had sent. Their elites could not have fallen to such feeble opposition. So what had truly happened? Pushing deeper into the cave system, he discovered the horrifying truth. A single, bestial figure stood calmly upon a grisly throne constructed from the bodies of his fellow hunters. Consumed by fury and disgust at this sight, Kaguru rushed forward, his blade a silver flash. Yet Jiang blocked the lethal strike with effortless ease, merely by raising his hand, a stark demonstration of his terrifying new abilities. As Kaguru pressed his assault, he grew visibly annoyed that this creature had so easily parried his sword. After landing a powerful punch, he escalated the conflict, unleashing his signature First Moon ability. Jiang managed to block it, but the technique inflicted visible damage, proving he was not entirely impervious. Kaguru refused to relent. He immediately upped the ante with the Second Moon technique, blasting Jiang with immense force and slamming him hard into the cave wall, which crumbled around the impact. Seizing the opening, Kaguru moved in for the Third Moon, an attack he was certain would be his final victorious blow. But Jiang moved with impossible speed, closing the distance to strike directly at Kaguru's neck. With a sudden, fluid movement born of supreme skill, Kaguru not only evaded but also countered, cleanly severing Jiang's right hand. "It's unfortunate," Kaguru mused aloud. "He was a good fighter." He explained calmly that his legendary sword could slice through even diamond itself. Believing the fight concluded, he decisively decapitated Jiang, feeling a pang of pity for the lesser hunters who had been defeated by him. As Jiang's consciousness began to fade into darkness, he was flooded by memories of his father. He remembered a man perpetually busy with work, yet invariably warm and friendly. That innate kindness was what he had loved most about him. The memory shifted to one fateful day, a young Jiang rushing to hug his father upon his return from work, only for a truck to appear from nowhere. Just as the child was about to be struck, his father sacrificed himself, shoving his only son to safety. For years, Jiang had shouldered the blame for his father's death. The tragedy caused the family business to collapse, burying them under insurmountable debt. He watched his mother's soft hands become rough and calloused from relentless labor. Whenever he asked if she was okay, she masked her sorrow and simply continued working. Jiang knew she was lying. Every night he lay awake, listening to her muffled cries through the thin walls. He became convinced that he was the root of all their suffering, that someone like him should never have existed. Perhaps then his parents would have been happy. In a moment of profound despair, he resolved to take his own life, but his mother walked in on him. It was in that traumatic instant they both discovered, in the most terrible way, that he was awakened. From that pain, a fragile hope was born. Jiang vowed to become a hunter. He would succeed and make her happy, no matter the cost. This powerful, painful memory acted as a catalyst. Jiang was violently jolted back to the present, not by hope, but by sheer, unadulterated fury. He recalled the exact words of Yum. The entire world was an enemy, but Japan was the primary target. Harnessing his beastly strength, his objective crystallized: kill Japan's strongest hunter. Kaguru, meanwhile, believed the conflict was over. He began to sheath his blade, turning away. But Jiang's severed head suddenly vanished from the ground and reappeared, its teeth sinking deep into Kaguru's ankle with ferocious force. Kaguru cried out, realizing with shock that his enemy was already regenerating. The searing, intense pain was unlike anything he had ever endured. He reacted instinctively, cutting the head off once more, but this time Jiang was fueled by an even greater, more potent malice. He began to summon the strongest technique he had forged in the hell of the Bloodgate. Recognizing the dire threat, Kaguru did not hold back. A massive crescent moon symbol materialized in the air and crashed down onto the ground. He then became a blur of motion, rushing through the cave like a madman to unleash the ultimate technique of the Kaguru style: the fatal and overwhelming 12th moon. Jiang was assailed from every conceivable angle by strikes so swift and powerful that their destructive energy bled out of the portal entrance, ravaging the surrounding landscape. The cave's interior was utterly demolished, reduced to shambles. Gasping for breath, Kaguru moved to exit, intent on treating his grievously injured leg. At that moment, a sharp spear-like bone projectile shot out, piercing his other, previously uninjured leg. Even after such catastrophic damage, Jiang's black heart refused to stop beating, and he began the process of regeneration once again. Kaguru was acutely aware of the major damage to both his limbs, but his overriding emotion was one of profound annoyance and insult that someone had dared to wound him so deeply. His pride injured more than his body. He turned and advanced to attack once more. Outside the cave, Prime Minister Judo and a full assembly of Japan's elite hunters had gathered. One member wondered aloud if such a large force was excessive for a single retrieval mission. Judo felt compelled to investigate personally. It had been 3 full days since Kaguru entered, and as their #1 hunter, he was a national asset they could not afford to lose. Before Judo could finish his sentence, a horrifying object flew from the portal: Kaguru's severed head. Jiang emerged right behind it, reborn and more terrifying than ever. Judo could only manage a single shocked scream before he, too, was swiftly decapitated. At the Korean Hunter Association headquarters, Yum's secretary watched the incoming reports and asked with concern if Jiang could truly succeed against Japan's formidable power. Yum noted calmly that they had to wait and see. The strategy was straightforward. If he could defeat Japan's strongest hunter, they would win the broader conflict. Suddenly, on the live feed, Judo's headless body stirred. He had activated his abilities at the last possible second, protecting his neck and preventing true death. This was the true power of Ryuzaku Judo, the Japanese prime minister, but also the SSS rank hunter of Japan, a veritable beast amongst men. The scene shifted to an explanation of the current world order. 3 years prior, the majority of monsters from the standard gates had been subjugated, and the world began to fear the very people they had once relied upon for protection. Driven by this fear, some nations attempted to preemptively eradicate the hunters, but they failed completely. Hunters worldwide saw this failed purge as their opportunity. Some reached formal agreements with their governments, coexisting in uneasy alliances. Others simply conquered their nations through sheer, unstoppable force. Each top hunter had gained supremacy in their own way. Japan was the country most completely conquered by hunters for one simple reason: its prime minister was an SSS rank. He had been aggressive and ambitious even before his awakening, and after the hunter system emerged, he immediately sought to take control of the Korean peninsula. Now, that ambition was being challenged by a single, unkillable, vengeful spirit. On the battlefield, everyone, including the reattached Judo, watched as Jeong continued to regenerate. Eager for glory, 2 hunters, the nation's 7th and 8th rank, intervened. They unleashed their most powerful skills upon Jeong's reforming body. Within a single second, he moved with blinding speed, decapitating the 8th ranked hunter and simultaneously grabbing the 7th, whom he smashed into the ground with such force that the man's skull exploded, leaving only his lower jaw. The onlookers erupted in rage and horror at this gruesome spectacle. Judo, the most infuriated of all, roared that anyone else who intervened would be killed by his own hand. As Judo's blood boiled, he recalled a memory from his past, finding a small child sitting outside in the freezing cold. When he asked the boy why he was there, the child, with feverish eyes, asked who he was. A younger Judo had simply sighed, given the boy his jacket, and taken him to a warmer place. As he did, he asked for the child's name. The boy looked up and said he was Kajuru. The memory of finding his future prodigy now fueled his fury. Judo's form shifted, brandishing a demonic appearance as his full transformation overtook him. He launched a punch that Jeong managed to block. The next strike, however, tore through Jeong's guard, through his hands and into his chest, followed by a blow that removed his face entirely. Even mutilated, Jeong refused to die. Enraged, Judo unleashed a final, cataclysmic blast of superheated magma, seemingly burning his enemy down to the bone. The other hunters marveled at this display of overwhelming strength, but Judo paid them no mind. He turned to retrieve his prodigy's head, only to hear a wet, tearing sound from behind him. It was Jeong slowly, inexorably regenerating back into the monstrous beast he was. As he stood over Kagaru's head, Judo remembered eliminating all political resistance in Japan, apologizing to a young Kagaru for the necessary violence. But that conquest, he knew, was not the end. They had barely consolidated control over Japan, and now their sights were set on South Korea and China. The war was only just beginning. He might actually die the next time he faces such overwhelming power. So if he wants to stop here and now, he would completely understand. Kagaru told him that he was the only person who had looked at him when he was dying on that street all those years ago, and he was going to pay him back for that kindness no matter what the cost. However, there was one specific thing he wished to ask of him. When everything was finally done, could he call him his father? Chodo felt that this was a somewhat close-minded question to ask. Even without asking for permission, he already considered him his precious boy. Having had enough of this emotional charade, Judo summoned an entire volcano into existence. The people around him were only kept safe because the woman standing next to him possessed powerful ice abilities. As Jeong stood defiantly in front of the newly formed volcano, it burst open abruptly, and Judo synthesized his entire body with its power, vowing to make every single one of his cells disappear from existence. With a single command, Jeong was swarmed by heaps of melting lava, which began burning his flesh away completely. But he found the strength to jump away from the main flow and reach for Shudo. Unfortunately for him, this action only proved to get him into a worse situation, as Judo grabbed him and threw him right into the very center of the volcano while summoning extreme amounts of lava to fill it. Everyone else managed to get away as the volcano grew bigger and cast a massive shadow over the entire city. Even while being constantly burned alive, Jeong continued to reach for Yudo, his soul not even recognizing the immense pain that he was in. Judo summoned Hanam to his side, and she immediately used her freezing abilities to make the surface of the volcano rock hard, sealing it. Jeong would now be trapped to melt in there for the rest of eternity. In South Korea, at the Kongkong Guild, a woman was working very hard to bring the bully back from the dead. She managed to successfully reawaken him, even after his body had been left in such a sorry state. While Judo allowed most of the hunters to return, permitting only a few to stay beside him, Jeong was annoyed inside his prison and started moving his hand up and down constantly. Apparently, this was not the first time he had experienced this kind of hot magma. The bloodgate he had survived was filled with it. This specific experience was something he had been through tens of thousands of times before. It was nothing for someone like him. However, even if he could get out, the pain did not get any less easy to bear. He gritted his teeth to endure it and propped himself on the hard surface using his feet, which allowed him enough leverage to hit his head again and again on the rocky ceiling. Hanami was the first to notice that the demon had gotten out. They could not get rid of his rage so easily. Ju noticed it too and told Hanem to take the other hunters and run away as far as they could. Once again, he went into his final form and landed so harshly that it made Jiang recoil back. Hanem was worried for him, remembering that when he had started his campaign to conquer Japan, he was always overdoing it. Hundreds of scars were strewn across his body, and sometimes his magma regeneration could not even catch up to his injuries. Judo had told her that amongst the great hunter nations like America or China, their country was considered the weakest. If they could not absorb South Korea soon, there would be no chance for survival for their country. Hanem had come closer and told him that many of their hunters would die in the process, but Judo had told her he would just fight more if that was the case. Even if his body became pure ash, he would protect his country, one of the few things he truly cared about. Within a second, he jumped towards Jiang and struck him hard into the side of the volcano. He then grabbed him by the neck and threw him forward, but Jiang managed to land on his feet. Judo did not stop there, however, as he summoned another river of magma and sent it straight into Jiang, who tried to block it but was unable to. With him temporarily incapacitated, Judo jumped to the very top of the mountain and landed down with extreme force, making the entire volcano rumble and fill with smoke. Hanem told everyone to leave as Jo had instructed them to do, but they refused. They had all received tons of help from him on a personal level and had all vowed to protect him with their very lives. Inside the volcano, Judo dragged a struggling Jiang down to its fiery depths, a place designed to disintegrate everything he was or ever would be. With this task finished, Judo had won. Unfortunately for him, Jiang's vengeful spirit refused to let go, so he rose once again. Only this time he knew exactly who to aim for. The world had taken his loved ones away, so he would do the same to others. He grabbed Hanem even as she froze him in a block of ice and began to drag her into the mountain, which made Judo prepare a mythical all-or-nothing strike. The other hunters descended to help too. Judo tried to launch his attack, but he couldn't strike as he wanted to because of the risk to his wife. So he gritted his teeth and used only one hand to cut Jiang's grasp on Hanem. This was exactly what Jiang had planned as he turned around and cut Judo's head clean off. This time, the leader was unable to reattach himself. Every single hunter with them began attacking the almost completely frozen Jiang, and sure enough, they shattered him into tiny pieces. Hanem was safe and sound, but Judo had died in the gruesomest way possible, his face stuck in an expression of pure anguish. They didn't have time to mourn their loss as Jiang rose once again, his wicked soul emanating from within him with pure malice. As he approached Hanem, she went completely crazy from the terror. But after a while, she woke up in bed with her husband. She had just had the worst nightmare ever, but Judo comforted her, assuring her he was here. After she kissed him, she saw the true reality of the situation. There was no coming back from what had happened. Her mind was broken and everyone around her was dead. Hanem chose to take her own life, freeing herself along with her husband in the afterlife. Jiang had won, but his thoughts only wandered to his next victims. He returned to the portal, the only home he knew now, and eagerly waited for others to come through. The Kim Kong Guild, the woman who had revived the bully, who was called Taesu, told him not to overdo it. He was the only one with any significant mana left within him, but even then they had barely managed to save him. His friends were a different story. Taesu knew they had barely had any mana in the first place, but he knew what had happened. The little worm that he used to play around with when he was younger had escaped the blood gate and killed him. He would never forgive that bastard. This was Kim Kang's guildmaster, the S-rank hunter Haesu. Reports said that he was only S-rank, but that appeared to be untrue. After a while, the woman released the seal on his ability, so he assembled all the members of their guild. Everyone bowed down to him, and the head of the intelligence team, Hankong Chan, noted that the monster he searched for had moved to a gate after the Japan massacre. Taesu didn't care about the details. He just wanted to kill the bastard and eradicate him from this world. With that in mind, Kyong Chan vowed to find him and present his head on a silver platter. But suddenly, Taeyu cut his head off and began absorbing his power. The others asked what he was doing, and Taesu went on a rant about Kyong Chan. At first, he had been the vice president of the Korean Hunter Association. When they absorbed that organization 3 years ago, he had been able to help dominate Korea. Additionally, his ability was S-rank telekinesis, which seemed to work quite well for his purposes. Nobody knew how to react as he crushed one of his own subjects until he spilled blood everywhere. The woman who had healed him asked if what he was doing was wise. His ability was more of a curse than anything. Taesu felt the opposite. It was actually a blessing in disguise, and with the help of his subjects, he was able to get stronger and stronger. 1528 members had gathered at this place, which was perfect for Taeyu to boost his power and enjoy himself. After a while, the ground was littered with corpses, and Taeyu enjoyed absorbing their powers, loving every second of it. The woman asked if this was enough, but Taesu denied it, stating that since that worm had killed the SSS-ranked prime minister, this was not nearly enough. He must kill that bastard no matter what. So he announced he was going to Russia, where he would have a little feast. Yum welcomed Jiang back and began the healing of his mother right away. Her S-rank healing restored damaged cells one by one using her mana. It would take a pretty long time, but she had vowed to save her. After she finished today's session, she went out and told Jiang that his mother would wake up in a week if she continued like this. She suddenly fell to the ground from exhaustion. Jiang noted that this must cost a pretty big amount of mana and asked why she was going this far for someone like him. Human grabbed his hand and told him that he had to survive no matter what. She attempted to heal his hand, but he rejected it. However, she had seen something from all of this. His beastification had progressed significantly within the blood gate. Ever since the gates first appeared 15 years ago, all other gates had slowly begun turning into blood gates. Since he had escaped, however, the change had picked up the pace, and as a result, all of the gates worldwide were turning into blood gates. The mana flowing from these gates was giving him more strength than he could imagine. In terms of flow, if a regular gate was considered a simple hole, the blood gate was a full passage. It was connected to somewhere, and something seemed to be coming through it, something that refused to let him go. The demons of hell had come to drag him back, even if they had to kill the entire world for it. Somewhere in a Korean city, tens of red portals appeared, and the monsters powering through them began killing everything in their path. At the office of the Korean president, he asked why this was happening and why the Kang Guild was not answering their calls. His subordinate explained that the entire guild had been wiped out and they were unsure of how it happened. The president asked what they should do, suggesting they request help from other countries. The president felt like that was the same as ending their country's sovereignty, so he told his subordinate to declare martial law. Even if they could not do anything significant with their military, and even if they didn't have Kim Kang, they still had other hunters. The hunters in question were all trying their best, fighting left and right to protect the population, even if the odds seemed to be against them at all times. Before they could even move to a new position, a gigantic monster moved in and crushed all of them. Jiang was surprised to see what was happening because of him, with Yuman asking what he would do about it. Just when a woman was about to be killed by the same gigantic monster, Jiang moved in and saved her. When he had died inside of the Bloodgate, the mana there had tried to turn him into a complete monster. He had endured great pain to overcome it and had obtained this abnormal regeneration as a result. At least, that is what he had thought. But seeing this situation, it appeared that the mana within him would not let him die until he became a complete monster, just like these fucking creatures around him. He gritted his teeth in anger. He had finally had a nice thought after a long time. He had wanted to live peacefully after his mother was treated, but it seemed like hell was not done with him yet. In the dimension where these portals came from, the king of the underworld watched Jiang fight eagerly, noting that he must be the one who had caused the crack to form. Jiang had promised Yuman that he would eliminate every monster emerging from the blood gates in exchange for the continued healing of his mother, an agreement to which she had already consented. She would be relocating his mother to the association's secure underground bunker for safety. Therefore, he was instructed to fight with every ounce of his strength. As he engaged in this task, Jiang recognized these creatures. They were the same kinds of beasts he had confronted during his entire 5-year confinement inside the Blood Gate. He understood that there was a finite limit to how many monsters could pour out of a single gate. Even though the number was still catastrophically high, he had successfully killed all the monsters in the immediate vicinity. If this pattern could continue, he would finally be able to achieve a peaceful life with his mother. Suddenly, a projectile shot straight through his thick skull, fired by none other than the National Army, which had arrived on the scene a little too late to be truly helpful. One soldier questioned the morality of their actions, pointing out that the creature had not attacked any people and had only been killing the monsters coming from the gate. The company commander dismissed this concern outright. He declared that the creature was the root cause of the entire disastrous situation. Their plan was simply to restrain him until hunter support finally arrived. Jiang could only wonder in confusion what they were talking about before he was violently pummeled by tank fire. All the while, the soldiers continued to shoot him relentlessly. Jiang experienced a type of pain he had never felt before and begged them to stop. But in the end, it was only his powerful regeneration ability that saved him from death. The dark portal loomed above him, channeling an extreme amount of energy into his body, a power that was driven and amplified by his consuming anger. Human had previously warned him about this phenomenon. Since the blood gate was open, he would continuously receive energy, making the suppression of his monsterification increasingly difficult. In a mere second, overwhelmed by this rage, Jiang killed all of the soldiers. But the sight of one fallen soldier transported him instantly to a painful memory from his past. When he was being brutally bullied in school, his childhood friend was the only person who took notice and asked him about it directly. He had demanded to know why Jiang let Taesu and the other bastards pick on him like that. Jiang knew that he was just an easy target and advised his friend to pretend they did not know each other, fearing his friend would get seriously hurt. The friend was naturally furious and asked if he was fucking crazy, but Jiang did not even dare to attempt eye contact, all for his friend's own protection. The friend left, and that was how Jiang believed he had lost his only friend in the entire world. That was what he had thought at the time, but the reality was different. His friend had been secretly collecting evidence of the bullying using a camera hidden in his right eye. After gathering enough damning photos, he sent all of the evidence to the police, the education office, and several major news agencies. Unfortunately, the corruption protecting the bullies ran far too deep. The next day, the friend woke up to find his right eye had been brutally taken from him as a warning. He finally gave up and decided he could no longer associate with Jiang for his own safety. Jiang was extremely mad when he found out. He knew it was the work of Taesu and his bastard friends. He vowed to make sure they paid the ultimate price. His friend grabbed his clothes tightly and told him to never attempt such a thing, explaining that Jiang had no idea what he had just been through. Jiang asked him what he would do now since he had lost his ability. But the friend told him not to worry, stating there was not much left for him to live for anyway. He said he would just sign up with the army. Now in the present, Jiang held the lifeless body of that same friend, the one he had lost contact with, pierced upon his own blade. The horror of the moment caused him to shake uncontrollably and scream out at the sheer cruelty of the world. The nearby monsters took notice of his enraged roar and charged in to devour him. But Jiang began cutting them apart, driven by sheer, unadulterated anger. Even as more portals appeared and he became vastly outnumbered, Jiang could see nothing but the burning rage inside of him. At the president's office, officials observed that a powerful monster was fighting the creatures emerging from the blood gates. They identified it as the same entity that had wiped out the Kaom Kong Guild and killed Japan's prime minister. They concluded he was the one responsible for the portals opening up in this manner. After some investigation, they deduced that killing it was the only way for the gates to revert to their previous state. The president asked why the two monstrous forces were even fighting each other. His assistant did not know the reason. What was important now was that even the other monsters could not kill that thing. Since the blood gates had begun to spread abroad, they could not delay action any longer, especially since the domestic hunters they had sent were all annihilated. The president did not want to do this at all, but he finally relented and contacted the Foreign Hunter Bureau for international assistance. In China, the nation's strongest hunter was just about done with his current business. It was then that he received news about Jiang, who was causing the blood gates. He observed the situation. Somewhere else, a powerful woman also took notice of Jiang and cursed in frustration. This was Russia's strongest hunter, Vladimir Rausana. Inside an active war zone, a priest felt the screams of pain emanating from the people of Korea and beyond. He decided it was time for him to go and intervene. His advisor suggested otherwise, warning that if he left, their war with Russia would be hard to win. The man did not care for this war and ended the entire conflict on the spot with a single, overwhelming strike. With that objective completed, it was time for them to depart. This was America's #1, the world's most powerful SSS ranker, Stephen Lucas. Jiang had spent 5 hellish years inside the Bloodgate doing nothing but fighting monsters. He had suffered under extreme conditions, unable to eat, drink, or even sleep. He faced a constant, brutal struggle merely to survive, all while being technically dead. Every time he lost his rationality, the monsterification process tried to turn him completely into a beast. But each time, Jiang remembered 2 crucially important faces: his own mother, who had suffered so much, and most importantly, the faces of the fuckers who were responsible for her suffering. This was the method he used to prevent his full monsterification. He channeled all of his anger into resisting it. But now had his resolve weakened because he had finally got his revenge, that was not it. The truth was that the mana flowing from the Bloodgate had grown stronger. Controlling it had become much more difficult. Because of that loss of control, he had committed a grave sin and killed people, innocent people who had nothing to do with his war. In a desperate form of atonement, Jiang had decided to avoid the gates directly and instead kill all the beasts around them. But even so, he wondered if this desperate action would ever be enough for him to forgive himself. Suddenly, his head was split into 4 separate pieces. As his eyes fell toward the ground, he saw a familiar figure standing before him. The memory surfaced from the year the gates first appeared. It was the end of that year, and Christmas was in full motion. A priest was conducting his usual ceremonies and prayers when the gates began to spread around his church. There were no hunters available to face the emerging beasts, so the priest urged everyone to evacuate and leave quickly. However, through his powerful will and fervent prayers, he reached an awakening right there and then, granting him immense power. This church was the biggest in all of America. It had 100,000 believers gathered that day, and in the ensuing chaos, only 138 people were lightly injured. Even though the situation seemed dire, the number of deaths was 0, all because Stephen Lucas had saved the day. He was the first SSS rank in the world, and at a young age, Jiang had truly admired him. That same hero was now standing right in front of him, which confused Jiang, as he was not supposed to be in this country. Lucas suddenly grabbed him and smashed his head again, noting with clinical observation that even with his holy powers, this beast would not die easily. Lucas did not falter, however, and used his powers to forcefully push Jiang away. He noticed Jiang was heading towards a gate, so he sidestepped and landed gracefully on the ground. High-level awakeners could communicate without needing translations because their mana facilitated understanding, so Lucas thought perhaps this creature would listen. Jiang stated that he was no monster, which made Lucas stop and listen to his story. Jiang told him everything. Lucas responded by hugging him right after, empathizing with how incredibly hard this must have been for him. He asked for his name, which Jiang provided. He also asked if Jiang realized that he, Lucas, fought to save people. Yet today, Jiang had committed a great sin and killed many of them. In order to never forget those brave people and to atone for his sins, Jiang had engraved each of their names into his own body. Lucas stated that if Jiang was being honest, he could help him eradicate the monsters. But he explained that while they were doing that, this calamity would continue to spread around the globe, causing millions of people to die. He apologized for not being able to rescue him, even though that was his core purpose as a hero. But this execution, he said, must be done for the betterment of everyone else. He would forgive Jiang's damned soul, but his flesh had to die immediately. Yum continued to heal Jiang's mother while watching the events unfold on a monitor. In Russia, Rausana was amazed that Lucas had just killed everyone in his path and then immediately left for Korea. Was he really saving all of his power up until now? One of her soldiers reported that they had lost 80% of their forces. They could no longer hold the front line. At this rate, the American hunters would surely overcome them. Rausana cursed again, stating that if they could just capture that fucking Arctic monster, they could turn the tide. Suddenly, Taesu appeared inside of her impenetrable fortress and said that he could catch it for her. The Arctic monster was the first SSS-ranked monster humanity had ever faced. With its appearance, the Russian Arctic base was wiped out in one swift blow. The Russian government had been ignorant of the gate and the monster that came from within it initially, but it mobilized all of their forces afterwards to no avail. In the end, they used half of their nuclear arsenal in a desperate attempt to deal with the threat. However, not only did the monster not die, because it could not be damaged by conventional weapons, only mana-based attacks, but due to the radioactive residue, Russia's north became an uninhabitable land filled with mutated monsters. Afterwards, in an attempt to recover the exorbitant amount of cash they had spent, they declared war on America. Rausana recognized the man in front of her. He was an S-ranked Korean hunter, was he not? She found his sudden appearance quite absurd. He had come here with no permission and was now boasting that he would defeat that thing even though he was merely S-ranked. Did he perhaps have a death wish he wanted to fulfill? With no visible movements of her own, Rausana used her power to put Taesu and his assistant on the ground, immobilizing them. Taesu, undeterred, stated that he knew she was here because of that monster and that they were getting messed up by the Americans. But he claimed he could defeat the Arctic monster, and pretty easily too. Rausana asked how someone as weak as him could possibly get through that intense radioactivity. He would need a powerful shield at the very least to protect him from the hazardous environment outside. It was then that Rausana saw something extremely strange. She perceived Taesu's true identity. With this new understanding in mind, she told him that if he were to defeat that monster, she would personally give him half of the monster's valuable mana stones. Taeyu replied that he didn't really care for those anyway. He stated he would return after he was done. Meanwhile, Lucas continued to push his immense power onto Jiang, completely eradicating his body from existence in a powerful holy glow. Fortunately, a small residual piece of Jiang remained, allowing him to begin regenerating, but he knew deep down that he could not face such overwhelming power. In only a second, Lucas arrived next to him once more. And even if Jiang did manage to land a single hit in a desperate counterattack, Lucas only responded by hugging him again. He apologized once more, but he said that if Jiang felt better by hurting him, then he should do so. He noted, however, that even if Jiang's regeneration was something truly amazing, it was not limitless. No matter how many times he attempts to break free, Lucas will simply embrace him once more and end his life without any agony. Jiang's sole ability is to envelop his body with a protective exoskeleton, but this act is always accompanied by mind-breaking, excruciating pain. Even though Lucas's method is supposed to be painless, Jiang can feel his entire body burning and breaking apart on a cellular level. Every single moment of his life up until this point has been excruciating for him. However, he had endured it all, fueled first by a desire for revenge and later by a sheer, desperate hope for a normal future. Unfortunately, Lucas's instant death attack, which forces his body into a constant, cyclical loop of regeneration and immediate destruction, has surpassed any and all pain he has ever experienced before. The cycle repeats over and over again, and each time the sensory overload feels worse than the last. Jiang's mind begins to fracture as he mentally relives the same traumatic pain. He remembers when he first met Taesu, who had asked him what he was so intently watching. Jiang had been watching videos of Stephen Lucas because he truly respected and admired the hero, but Taeyu was far more interested in Jiang's unique ability. Jiang had demonstrated it for him, only for Taeyu to punch him to the ground, calling him truly disgusting for his power. Now Jiang wonders only one thing: why must he suffer so immensely? Who has he wronged to deserve this? And what has he done that is so terribly wrong to receive such brutal punishment from people who do not even know what his life has been like? Why must he be forced to go through the same unimaginable pains over and over again without end? In his shattered mind, he damns his creator and everything that his creator has ever made. A final, fading fragment of his consciousness still clings to a sense of morality. It tells him to stop this path of destruction. It argues that if they continue to live, countless innocents will surely die in their stead. Their mother is sure to live again thanks to the deal, and that should be enough for them, right? Jiang violently silences this last piece of morality by telling it to fuck off. And in that moment of absolute rejection, the blood gate portals around him suddenly begin channeling a massive, unprecedented ton of energy directly into him. Lucas is powerful because he possesses unwavering faith, but Jiang has become powerful because the entire world has utterly abandoned him. He strikes out once, his newfound power emanating throughout the entire city like a destructive warning for everyone around it. He has actually managed to pierce Lucas, a feat a nearby broadcast drone captures. Somewhere safe, Lucas's own son watches the feed and prays fervently that his father comes back safe. The buildings around the immediate area begin to collapse from the shockwaves of their clash, but Yuman, watching from her lab, doesn't care about the destruction. As she pushes her limits to completely heal Jiang's mother, she knows that she is dangerously overdoing it, but she pushes her healing power even harder, causing herself to fall to the ground and vomit a dangerous amount of blood. Even though she has suffered great internal damage from the strain, the treatment is finally complete, and Jiang's mother wakes up from her deep, years-long slumber. In Russia, Tayu receives the urgent information that Jiang is fighting Lucas right now. He thinks that Bastard really has some guts to face America's strongest, but he also notes that their situations are quite similar in their outcast status. Jiang has absorbed the ominous mana from the Red Gates, which Lucas feels is an extremely ominous and corrupting power. But even so, he states he will accept all of Jiang's pain and forgive him for his sins. Jiang has had enough of his holy preaching, so he pulls out his blade and slashes at Lucas, who disappears into thin air to avoid it. Lucas explains that most times, having someone who will listen to your troubles can help a ton, so he shall be that someone for him and listen to his every worry. Lucas then puts his hand directly through Jiang's skull in a swift move. Jiang, however, takes this as a point-blank opportunity and cuts the arm off as it is lodged within his head. This severe injury causes Lucas to retreat momentarily, and even though Jiang was extremely damaged, the physical pain no longer seems to bother him. His mind is now completely filled with the singular, burning thought of revenge. The severed hand still lodged within him breaks open his head further as it dissolves. But Jiang still charges forward while Lucas notes aloud that after receiving his divine ability, he constantly hears sounds, the desperate cries of people in immense pain, the global suffering caused by famine and illness and other calamities, the shouts of pure agony from those who hope to be saved. Normally, he admits not even he could bear something like that constant psychic barrage. But he also hears other, more positive sounds. He hears the sounds of hope, of mutual support, and of genuine happiness. The grateful invocations of those who have been saved by his actions echo within him. And even now, in the midst of this battle, he can hear them. With a single, loud clap of his hands, he completely eviscerates Jiang's body, but he begins to get pushed back as Jiang reconstitutes himself with no visible injuries. Lucas pushes his power hard once again, making Jiang dissolve into a mere pile of blood. But he declares that even if 1,000 holy hands drag him down to hell, Jiang will complete his objective and kill this man. He escapes out of Lucas's grasp and rushes in for another attack. With Lucas wondering if this violent confrontation is truly the only method through which he can win, he casts a glowing cross upon Jiang, who becomes completely controlled by the holy symbol and now knows that Lucas's belief will test him to his core as he begins to rip his own body apart. 1,000 words, perhaps many more, begin to flood his mind, compelling him. He wears a look of sheer, unnatural happiness on his face as he mangles his own form. Lucas knows that he has him trapped in this holy compulsion, and he begins chanting like a maniac, driving Jiang further into insanity, forcing him to mangle more and more of his body until he will be judged free of sin. Jiang realizes what the holy man is doing to his mind, and it hurts. Oh, it hurts so much. However, the compulsion makes him feel that he must fear that man. He knows that he must. Through fearing him, he paradoxically gains a warmth he has never felt before. He continues to rip himself apart piece by piece, but in doing so, he finally realizes the truth of what this all means. The respect Lucas is receiving, and the blind faith the masses have in him all come from this induced fear and from his dirty mind control. He is no saint but a snake who has deceived everyone. Lucas and his followers continue to pray fervently as Jiang's body is completely eradicated by his own hands, all of them having absolute faith in their Lord and Savior. Tao is meanwhile having some difficulty with the Arctic ice beast, which is proving to be annoyingly strong. But he thinks this bastard is nothing compared to that American bastard Lucas. If he cannot kill something like this, he knows he can't kill Jiang either. He pushed his own power even further because he had vowed that he would kill that bastard with his own hands. On the battlefield, nothing visible remains of Jiang. But through his sheer, indomitable spirit, the blood gates revive him, allowing him to sneakily attack Lucas from behind with a sharpened rib bone. Unfortunately, Lucas has keen senses and has noticed him, so he picks him up and crashes him into a building with such immense force that the entire structure cracks down the middle. Jiang lands down in the sewers below, where his mother is for some reason now present, and she looks at the monstrous form in horror, wondering if the thing in front of her is really her son. Jiang sheds a single black tear as he sees his mother, who slowly remembers what happened on the day they found out he was awakened. He had promised to her that he would become a hunter and let her have an easy life, but she hadn't wanted any of that and had considered his frightening ability a curse from the devil himself. Judging by how he looks now, completely monstrous, it seems like her theories were right all along. She begins to run away from him in terror, but Jiang doesn't understand why. He's her sweet son, she has nothing to be afraid of. He rips a part of himself apart to reach for her, grabbing her hand and causing her to fall to the ground. Jiang knows that she's scared, probably because of the horrific form that now envelops him, but he can assure her that what she's seeing now is not his true self. Blood sprays as he continues to rip his own form apart, trying to appear less threatening, and his mother also punches him in a panic, which seems to be the final emotional nail in the coffin for his humanity. Lucas comes around the corner and sees that his mother is still alive. He accuses Jiang of having lied in front of a righteous person. He declares him impious and states he shall receive mighty judgment for this deception. Before Lucas can do anything else, however, Jiang swiftly cuts his head off once more, leaving Jiang to suffer alone over his mother's rejection. However, something ethereal and glowing comes out of Lucas's severed head and goes directly into Jiang's body. At first, this does not seem to do anything noticeable, but then Jiang begins acting very strangely, as if someone entirely different has taken access and control of his body. The woman that has now taken control of his body confesses that she likes strong men, but hates weak ones, just like the countless men she has killed before, because they couldn't accept her unique, childlike glee in battle. So she had loved Lucas to the point that it became a dangerous obsession she could not ignore. She wanted him more specifically to become one with him permanently. A while later, she had awakened her own unique abilities and finally got her wish. She got a specific skill that allowed her to become one with someone else's body and soul. With this power, she always gets what she wants. This time, she has found a man even stronger than Lucas. Truly, this is the best thing that has ever happened to her. As she gains full control of Jiang's body, she sees all of his memories, and more specifically, one poignant memory where he awoke at night and did not see his mother beside him. She was secretly leaving the house and he had asked where she was going, but she had suddenly begun to sprint away, forcing a young Xing to run after her, only for him to get hurt in his ability to automatically regenerate some of his skin, revealing his nature. His mother had only seen regret as she looked at the thing behind her, and with no further regrets, she continued to run. Jiang had not stopped searching for her, but his small child body could no longer keep up. In the end, the only thing he could do was despair and beg his mother not to abandon him. He's her son. She should come back and stay with him. Why did she leave? Was it because her husband died because of him? Or is it because of this filthy, monstrous ability of his? If he really is a monster, he ought to die like one. With a broken bottle he found, he slit his wrists open. But his ability did not let him die and painfully regenerated every injury. Jiang knew that he couldn't die, but he refused to give up on his misery. He had had enough, so he began to stab himself repeatedly in the hopes of finally getting his wish for death. A while later, his mother's conscience had gotten the better of her, so she had returned to Jiang, who apologizes profusely as he did wrong. However, the damage was done. No matter what he does now, his mother was rightfully horrified then and remains so now, but she realizes she had judged him too harshly. Even if he is a beast, he is still her son. The woman possessing him enjoys Jiang's suffering a little bit too much. And since she can move his body now, she begins to dance, only to feel an immense amount of pain just from those simple movements. The pain she is feeling right now is something that she has never felt in her entire life. The exoskeleton has entered his intestine and his muscles are twisting unnaturally, causing his intestines to rip apart. What's worse is that it keeps regenerating, making it a never-ending symphony of utter, relentless pain. Does this man experience something like this every single second of his existence? Because of her weakness and inability to handle the pain, Jiang regains some control and tells her to get out of his own personal hell, threatening that he will show her another even worse one. The woman cannot stand the agony and immediately leaves his body, appearing before Jiang and pleading for him to listen to her. Jiang instantly cuts her in two without a word and now looks at his mother, undecided on what to do next. Out of Lucas's fallen body, a brilliant holy light comes out which emanates throughout the entire area, signaling a new development. Lucas held his defeated form up high, forcing him to witness the aftermath, but put him down shortly afterwards and began to ascend into the skies. Unleashing his full powers, a venerated glowing angel materialized to come to the Earth's defense, and then a full legion more followed. Their collective light glistened like the burning sun, and their holy strikes began to liberate the Earth of the vile demons swarming it. This immense power was felt by people all over the world, even by those who were not religious. Lucas's son was feeling the departure the most. Just before all this had begun, his father had told him not to pray today. The son had known what would happen because he had inherited the same powers. Lucas had hugged him tightly and explained that eventually all parents have to leave their children's side, and when that time inevitably comes, the child must learn to stand alone. Luca, now fully transformed, looked down at Jiang and told him that a weight that was far too heavy for any one person awaited him. He would experience much more pain and suffering in the future. He warned that it would be dreadful and unbearably cruel. But even so, he begged him to not lose his faith in humanity. Up until the very end, as he faded away into light, Lucas thought that he had shed a lot of tears in his life, especially so when his beloved wife had died. But now, in this final moment, he felt only pure bliss. His son understood and wished his dad a final, tearful goodbye. At the same time in Russia, Taesu laughed like a complete maniac, his own body beaten up to a bloody pulp, but he had successfully absorbed the Arctic monster. He had won the battle, though it had almost cost him his life. Yet, his reward was undeniably great. He slowed his manic laugh as he was struck by a memory of what his older brother had forced him to do years ago. He really hadn't wanted to comply, but his brother had insisted that he must become strong so that their guild could grow bigger and bigger. This pressure, he was told, was all for the sake of their father, and whether he liked it or not, he would still do it because he was commanded to. Tesu truly hadn't wanted to hurt anyone, but he was forced to test his dangerous abilities on living people, always hoping against hope that they wouldn't die from the process. He went back to report to Risana, who acknowledged that Lucas had helped weaken the beast, but to actually defeat that thing was truly impressive. As she had promised, he would receive half of the mana stones dropped by that monster. Tayasu interrupted her, stating bluntly that he had already absorbed all of the mana stones. Risana asked, her voice cold, why he would do such a selfish thing. She warned that his body would not be able to withstand that much raw power. He instantly charged at Risana in a frenzy, but she kept him pinned down with only a single finger and demanded again why he had betrayed their agreement. Why commit such an act? Tao snarled that there was somebody he really wished to kill, and for that he needed every ounce of power. That was why he now hoped that she would die too. She instantly identified and killed the clone he had made as a decoy, and stated coldly that those mana stones would have been able to strengthen the entire Russian forces tenfold. Yet he had dared to consume all of them for such a stupid personal reason. Did he really have no intention of fighting for their motherland? Taesu summoned a myriad of clones, all of whom were immediately struck down by Risana. Taesu, knowing the extreme danger he was in, threw his assistant Yeju away to safety. At the same time, Risana commanded their death for this insubordination, first striking at the assistant, whom Taesu protected at the last second with a sacrificial clone. His mind split into multiple consciousnesses as even more clones appeared. All of them made him remember someone who had died because of him, someone he had killed, and all the terrible things he had been forced to do. All of the clones used their various abilities on Risana, who, with just a snap of her fingers, created a pretty but gruesome show of fireworks made from their exploding guts and entrails. Risana was not done, however, as she created a mighty black hole in the sky that threatened to erase Taesu's very existence, but he only smiled defiantly. He had been with his assistant Yeju since he was very young. He had always come to her when something bad had happened. He had told her about how he was forced to kill people and that he did not want to kill, his childlike mind at the time not fully realizing why he was forced into such actions. Now he wished with that same childish force to not die, creating so many clones that some of them didn't even recognize who they were anymore. He descended upon Risana and told her to die with a face filled with pure malice. After Lucas disappeared from the earth, Jiang began to cry, not because he felt redeemed by the man's words, but because he decided it was all a bunch of fucking nonsense. He didn't care about what that holy man had said. His body was fully back, meaning that he could finally go see his mom. Almost immediately, a powerful hunter landed and crushed him down under their foot, the impact enough to pulverize Jiang's body. In the past, at the Russian presidential office, just as the nuclear beast had appeared, the president had given up, thinking that the world was officially over. Rosana, who was the Minister of National Defense at the time, had told him that they could kill that thing with concentrated mana attacks. They just needed to gather their awakened individuals. The president had told her that it was already too late. They had already launched their remaining nuclear bombs all across the globe in a final act of spite. He declared he would not let this country die alone, so the whole world should die together. Rosana had immediately launched herself into the air and reached the nuclear missiles in flight. With all her might, she pulled them as high into the atmosphere as she could before they exploded. This spectacular, desperate act could be heard all across the world. After Risana landed, the president cowered down in fear, begging to be saved. Risana apologized, but stated she had to do what was necessary. He had been an awful president, but a good father to her. With that, she took full control of the country. But America had seen that Russia had randomly launched a bunch of nuclear missiles. For the sake of world peace, they vowed to eliminate Russia post-haste. Risana knew she could not let this happen, so she told the American president that their president was already dead and that they surrendered unconditionally. The American president couldn't give any less of a fuck and only mocked her. Rusana's children, Medv and Alisa, had come in during the call. They were both rightfully scared, but at that time, Rosana had vowed to protect both of them and this entire country from any and all threats. Rosana now remembered the promise she had made to her children and pushed her power even further against Taesu. But even with this resolve, a part of her realized she had been emotionally dead for a long time. She just had not allowed herself to realize it. At the Russian awakened residential district, her children had been wondering if the hunters that went to America would be safe. Their nanny was assuring them that they would all return soon. Medv and Alisa believed that they could fight too since they were awakened, but their nanny told them there was no need for that. In what seemed like a nanosecond, the entire residential area was suddenly taken out by an attack, along with Medv. Tayu absorbed his power as he closed in on the terrified Alisa, her mind not even able to process what she was seeing or what had just happened. Tayu decided to leave her be. He really didn't have a need to kill her since their powers were somewhat similar. That was when he remembered what always happened when he let someone go. They became a future threat. So he changed his mind, and Alisa was swiftly sent to see her brother in the afterlife. The hunter who had found and crushed Jiang was quite interested in him. Jiang fell down, his thoughts consumed only by his mother. The hunter broke his body again and then snapped his head in two for good measure. He continued to kill him again and again in a brutal cycle as Jiang screamed pathetically for his mother, which the hunter found rather rhythmic and pleasant to listen to, but he wondered aloud why a grown-ass kid was whining about his mother so much. Jiang turned his reforming head to him and asked if he perhaps did not have a mom. Was he really that much of a loser? Since the hunter had had his fill of torture, he kicked Jiang's mangled body into a nearby red portal, sealing him to the same fate he had suffered many years ago. When Jiang's mother had first woken up, she had been swiftly escorted through the underground bunker because it was not safe. Along the way, she got separated from the group, and that was when she saw her son, or what looked like a horrible abomination mimicking her son. She now wakes up once again in a different bunker. Yum was there, telling her that they were in the annex bunker now. The mother refused to face the new reality, insisting that Thing truly could not be her son. Human showed her evidence that he was. She explained that he was now 23 years old. He had gotten stuck in a blood gate all those years ago, and to escape, he had undergone a drastic transformation. After that, he had blocked the explosion of a blood gate and had been fighting to protect the world, all in order to save her in his own way. Even now, Yum said he only thinks about her. After being kicked inside the portal, Jiang woke up in a perfect replica of his only childhood home, wondering if he had really come back. He went to his mother, but she bore the visage of his own bones, making him realize that this was not the real world but another cruel illusion. He woke up in reality just in time to grab the edge of the portal opening, which caused him such great pain and suffering that his body began multiplying and destroying itself all at once. He remembered a moment from the past when he had asked his mom if she was okay after his father's death, who had confirmed that she was. Jiang had wondered if it was really true, as his dad had died because of him. His mother had held her rage in and told him to just smile, assuring him that everything would become better once he began to smile a bit more. Now, as Jiang underwent a different, more horrific type of transformation, he forced his mangled face to smile through the tears, his body becoming an amalgamation of horrifying flesh and blood, remaking him into the monster he feared he was. He continued to smile grotesquely as he came out of the portal and struck the hunter directly, laughing maniacally as he pummeled the hunter. He understood, however, that he must go see his mother again, even in this form. So he turned to the hunter and asked him why he had done something like this to him. Why had he made him into the monster he thought he had left behind? The hunter managed to get out of the way just before he could get swallowed by the monstrous mass. But Jiang did not stop his assault. He was adamant on killing this man, whether it took him 100 or 1,000,000,000 more deaths to achieve it. In China, one subordinate wondered aloud if this escalating situation was okay. That beast was on a completely different level, as even America had lost to him. Could they realistically fight back? Ling Jiaoer, China's #2 SSS rank, told him that this line of thinking was absurd. That man, their leader, would not lose to anyone after all. He was her brother after all. China had quickly resolved their own gate situation thanks to their huge numbers of hunters. Naturally, the government could not hold control over the hunters. So the hunters had escaped governmental control and united under one banner to start a new generation that would propel them forward. However, they had all died gruesomely to only 2 people. Her brother had killed the resistant hunters, while Ling had revived them to make them into loyal slaves. This was how they had united China under one gigantic banner. Their rule now absolute, their word as precious and unbreakable as the heavens themselves. The reason all of this had been possible was because of one person's unparalleled strength. China's #1, a beast of pure and illogical power, the SSS rank Luang. Unfortunately for him, Jiang immediately broke him into a bunch of tiny little pieces upon their meeting, showing off the immense strength that he now possessed. Jiang thought of this as fun, but he did not know the doom he had brought upon himself. Unfortunately for Jiang, Guang just remade himself instantly and cut him down along with the entire building behind him. He seemed to be having a lot of fun, and Jiang was too, coming up behind Guang and hitting him with a powerful strike. Guang easily grabbed his attacking hand, but he paused, not seeming to understand something. The thing he was supposed to fight was apparently a monster, but the being before him was fundamentally human. Jiang asked what of it, and as Guang dodged his next attack, he said that even though Jiang was human, he could sense the overwhelming mana of a monster radiating from him. Jiang turned around to bite him, only catching his lips in the process as Guang sent him flying with a punch. Even if all of that was true, Guang noted, monsters were not supposed to be fighting while actively protecting others. He could see it clearly. Jiang had someone or something he desperately wanted to protect. Jiang, with a sword still lodged deep in his right eye, smiled through the pain and said that it was true. It was his mom, the one who had abandoned him once again and run away. However, he still loves her. Guang is curious about the story behind him, noting it's similar to his relationship with his younger sister, but nothing is truly the same. He states that once in his life, a man will dream of becoming the strongest. Their instincts are ready to fight powerful enemies, so if Jiang is strong, he will fight and defeat him. Jiang doesn't even let him finish his sentence before attacking, destroying part of the ghastly weapon Guang is holding, which begins to scream out in pain. As they are both having fun, the weapon directly asks Jiang to be saved, but he doesn't care and breaks it apart. As Guang brings out a bunch more weapons, Jiang sees the human eye that came out of his last weapon, prompting Guang to explain, "These are all ego swords. A blacksmith made them for him using hunter corpses." Jiang exclaims in surprise as he charges in. They really are super cool. He lets his head be cut off so he can swiftly regenerate and strikes Guang into the wall. The S-ranked blacksmith Gal Yakbong is also there. He has been gathering corpses, around 40 in total. At this point, Guang tells him to get to work as he continues his fight with Jiang. And Yakbong does as he is told, striking his hammer into the flesh blob that he will fashion into a weapon. The people used in this vile creation scream out, most of them in pain and in fear. It only takes a few minutes for Yakbong to finish his latest work, and in his words, it's a masterpiece. He hands the reins over to Guang, who grabs the handle and immediately throws the weapon at Jiang, who gets hit. But as he is clung to it, he can hear a mother and a daughter cry out for each other. Their screams getting more and more desperate. Jiang grabs both of them and reunites that lovely family in eternal death. But Guang is not done and hits him again. Jiang finds it simply amazing that all those bastards who were killed by monsters are all gathered in a single place. He has killed tons just like them who were once alive. Seeing how these guys are essentially already dead, killing them really is easy. Gong points another weapon at him, explaining that he tries to record almost everything when he fights. So he bought an eye from Korea 5 years ago just for that purpose. He fashioned a blade after the owner of that eye too. Jiang is shocked to see his old friend here. And Guang gets all he needs to know about him from his ability. He can see that he did not even fight and ran away like a weakling. He truly is a despicable monster who only deserves death. Jiang finds himself in front of his old friend and can't even bear to look at him because of the guilt. He crouches down to his level and says that it's all right. They are friends after all. However, why did he do this to his only friend? He only tried to help him. So why did he kill him? Jiang screams out as he is haunted by his friend's words and something comes to his mind. His mother's advice to just smile. He begins to do just that as he rips his face apart, but even that doesn't seem to be working anymore. He tries to end his life again and again. Countless times he tries until he loses count. After a final attempt, he leaves the trail of his own body behind him and asks Guang to kill him. Back in China, Jiao wonders if her brother is having fun. But that's when a guard comes and informs her that the northern hunters were all annihilated. It seems that Taesu has come to get even stronger, whether she likes it or not. In northeast China stands the Black Dragon fortified castle, or at least it did before Taiyu caved it in. Due to the amount of powers he took, he begins to freak out, his mind not bearing the load he put on it. His assistant begs him to stop as he was actually the one who has been wrong all this time. Taesu denies such a fact. Back when he bullied Jiang for the first time, he only did it because he was disgusting. He would have left it at that, but Taesu laughed and agreed that it was gross. As he apologized, Taesu became even more infuriated. That's why he believes that he started it. Guang smashes Jiang's face with his foot before raising his spear and cutting his limbs off. He does not stop there, as using a bunch of coordinated strikes, he shreds his entire being, leaving only a measly eye. He throws that into a nearby building too. But this does not stop Jiang's regeneration. Guang cuts him up again. This going on for a while as the bodies keep piling higher and higher. This does not stop Jiang, who still smiles as he pushes through the spear and strikes at Guang, who only annihilates him time and again. No matter how Jiang tries, he cannot seem to reach him. Guang throws him into the ocean with a spear, where Jiang feels his lungs fill with water, his eyes diluting and regenerating at the same time. He once again remembers his mother's advice to smile. Even through his water-filled body, he laughs. But his mind deteriorates further, creating a rage that ushers in a bunch of red portals, giving him a power that he has never had before. Guang is even more intrigued, but he cannot even react as Jiang cuts through his jaw and decapitates him. However, Guang grabs and puts himself back together before he loses himself. His regeneration perhaps even more grotesque. He crushes Jiang again, who comes back and prepares a strike using his new appendage. Guang's speed overcomes him once again, launching him into the air with 100 spears. As Jiang flies through the barrier between atmosphere and space, his head falls down, burning brighter than the shiniest diamond as it burns. Guang is overcome by this beautiful sight, and as Jiang regenerates, he can only remark it as beautiful. In China, Jiao takes control of the situation. She apprehends Tao and his assistant before asking if he was the one who killed her loyal people. Jiao wonders what he will do now as he will have to face a 100 million hunters all by himself. Taiyu immediately creates an explosion and rushes away with his assistant, who even in this dangerous situation wonders why he is going this far. Taiyu explains that he cannot give up now as the soldiers follow them. He must kill Jiang no matter what. He remembers a talk he had with his old friends. One of them said that there are too many hunters in the world. They have begun fighting amongst themselves. Eventually, they will surely come to conquer Korea as well. Since the situation would become dire, he suggested to Taesu that if they die fighting, he should simply absorb their mana. Taesu was shocked. How could he ever do such a thing? The friend actually thought it was pleasant. If he did that, they could live eternally with him. They are friends after all, right? Taiyu was touched by his words and he hugged them tightly, vowing to stay friends forever. Now Taesu laments that he could not keep his promise, all because of Jiang. His assistant is shocked by what he said, not because it's true, but because this is not how that happened. His two friends did indeed talk about other hunters coming to invade Korea, but Taesu was actually above them in a tree and said that they will all get killed like the dogs they are. His friend tried to say something, but Taeyu immediately descended and asked if there was a problem. He leaves the assistant in a cave as he must avenge his friends once and for all. As he leaves, she looks at him with sadness, wondering just what the hell is going on with him. After he passes the mountain range, he comes face to face with the army of controlled hunters. Jower is not China's number 2 for nothing, as her abilities allow her to revive and enslave the dead awakened. This ability allowed her to revive every hunter in China. So it's not an exaggeration to say that she is the embodiment of China, but at this very moment, even someone like her felt that something had gone horribly wrong. Taesu descends with an army of his own and begins to slay the undead awakened. Shiwa immediately figured out that the person in front of her had completely dominated the SSS rank. Actually, perhaps he even stood beyond comprehension. This single young man has transcended his humanity and now stands above them. The undead awakened are emotionless and calculated. But even they started to begin to fear, and the survival instincts that got left over made them run away. They did not want to court deaths. Jower did not want to give up, so she told them to charge as she is right behind them and will revive if anything goes wrong. She had a perfect remedy for their fear, and that was simple hope. However, Taesu has become too strong, so he slices through them like a child in a drawing. He can only think of slashing as his entire body contorts, making him remember someone who was erased from his memories so long ago. His brain hurts as his mind continues to deteriorate. But Jower has not given up yet. She is the queen of China and will not lose to a scoundrel like him. Taeyu says otherwise as he cuts her head off within a second, allowing her to remember why she even did all of this. When they were young, the Mount Hua sect attacked their lands and completely overpowered them because the leader was an SSS rank, a woman. He wondered why they were still here when this was their territory. Jower's mother called him a bastard as this is where her family has lived for centuries. Before she could finish her sentence, a Wan cut her head off and it landed right in front of her hiding children. Jower naturally began to cry at this sight, but Guang wondered why she was crying. Both of their parents died because they were weak. That's the law of nature, right? Jower was surprised that he was not sad, but why would he be? He knew that he's going to become strong and that he would kill those guys anyway. Now Jower cries just as before, not because she is sad, but because she must have died because she is weak. Almost like reading her mind. Taesu confirms as such as he steals her candy and crushes it under his teeth. Jiang immediately descends on Guang, crashing him into the building they were standing in, then into the earth, and finally right into a red portal. He pushes even harder to make Guang go inside, as this was his plan after all. Unfortunately, Guang manages to grab Jiang's body before he descends and applies a deadly poison that paralyses him. He is shocked to see that he came out of a place like this one. He's truly incredible. This is why he's so strong, he will acknowledge him. Out of everyone he has ever fought, he is by far the strongest. Because of this, he will use this ability on himself for the very first time. His poison arts combine all the world's poisons into this substance, which directly attacks his cells and keeps them in tremendous pain. Now he can only wonder if he can actually handle it, but Jiang immediately slashes back at him, almost as if the poison never got to him. Guang feels a childlike emotion surge within him, reminiscent of when he ate his first piece of candy or saw his father's gentle smile. He recalls his first duel and his subsequent victory, then his second, his third, his ninth, and his millionth victory. This new feeling is even better than all of those triumphant moments combined. He wonders why that is. So to find out, he fills the entire area with a deadly poison that sweeps both of them into its corrosive embrace. They are both smiling like maniacs amidst the toxic cloud. Guang remembers a time when a woman told him that she loved him, but he did not feel that specific emotion, even after being intimate with countless women. The woman was sad to hear this, but promised him that someday he would feel it for the first time. Now Guang finally understands what love is. Jiang grabs him, and because of their proximity to the red portal, they both start to merge into one another, each feeling the other's memories firsthand. After the building crashes down completely, Jiang is still conscious, but it seems that Guang has been shredded to scraps, leaving only him alone in this dark hell. His mother watches this on a monitor as she attempts to walk, her thoughts completely consumed by her son. Back in China, Yeju meets with Taesu, who asks why all of this had to happen. He remembers his father and his abusive mother. He raises his fist in the air in anger but ultimately puts it down. All he had ever wanted was to be loved. He begins spouting gibberish, his mind racing in 100 different directions at once. Suddenly, someone appears behind him. It is a scarred woman holding something. Yedu recognizes her as the Japanese hunter Hanem, but what is she doing here? It seems that she has heard they are gathering forces to get revenge on Jiang. Taesu immediately turns to her and asks if she wants to become his strength. But it's not just her. She explains that she has heard there's a hunter on their team who can bring the dead back to life. So all she wants is for them to save this specific person. Together, they are Japan's strongest hunters and they will be of help. Tiesu begins to laugh like a maniac and then suddenly just agrees. Judo does wake up as promised and meets Hanem face to face, or rather, he meets her decapitated head. Tiesu says hi to him in a taunting voice, prompting Judo to rush him with an ultimate attack. But Tayu simply decapitates him too and gains all of his powers along with all his memories. He can feel his hate for Jiang intensify and his mind continues to weaken from the influx. The building crashes down on Jiang, who immediately begins to regenerate. It seems that Guang is still partly alive within the rubble. He begins screaming at Jiang out of sheer desperation. Jiang simply crouches down to his level as he regenerates. Guang says that this was pretty fun and remembers what his father told him as they were watching their family burn down. He was told he had to become strong so that he would not experience this humiliation ever again. He should be so strong that he could even beat his own father. Guang remembers that he immediately cut his father's head off and was glad that he won, but he wondered why his dad wasn't responding. Now he would like to apologize to his father because he lost. Yakbong sees his master's demise and crouches down, sad to see that he has finally died. He uses his hammer to strike himself in the head, creating a strange area where the dead are slowly rising from their graves. Jiang doesn't move, allowing an undead creature to strike his head, who seems adamant about his demise. 100 more descend on him, and with whatever tools they could get their hands on, they pummel Jiang like wild beasts. One even drives a truck over him. Jiang is sad because he believes he can no longer meet his mother like this, as a chainsaw slowly descends onto his flesh. He thinks that it's finally time for him to die, but suddenly his mother appears in the area, who calls out to him, making her become a prime target for these vengeful spirits. Someone actually strikes her with a stone, making Jiang go over the tipping point. Taesu's madness continues as he absorbs JTO, but Yeju cannot bear to see him like this and attempts to seal his ability as she cannot lose him. She remembers her dad always used to beat their mother, but her mother did not seem to care because she had autism. For them, the gates and the manifestation of awakened powers were a calamity unlike any other. Their mother couldn't control her abilities and took out their dad right then. Because of her mental disorder and because she had children, she was put on probation. Yeju was a fool back then. She thought that things would get better, but her brother had other ideas. From the next day, he started working in place of their father and also took his place in the beatings. As the days passed, his attacks became more and more severe. Suddenly, she awakened. So since hunters make money, she thought that she could escape this hell, but it seemed that her brother switched his target to her. She tried to rush out of the house, but because she tripped, her brother had free rein and started beating on her. Their mother tried to save her, but he kicked her to the ground, causing an injury that she wouldn't ever wake up from. Yedu had enough and called him a piece of fuckers, but he immediately began pummeling her too, beating her half to death. That same night, she met up with Taesu, who confessed that he had killed another person. He wondered how many he would kill until this stopped. His mother and father were not here anymore. He lamented that his ability truly was a cursed one. Yedu revealed that her ability would let her seal his ability, but before that, she would like him to kill one more person. They went home, and just as her brother opened the door, Tayu struck him down, seeing all that he had done to his family. Suddenly, his brother appeared, who immediately put a collar on him and asked what he was doing. Had he not had enough of killing people? Was there truly a need for him to kill one more? Yedu tried to attack him, but his brother noticed and grabbed her hand. Tayu couldn't let her die, so he started dragging himself on the ground, which allowed Yeju to seal his brother's ability. Tayu immediately struck him down before he could even say a word, ending their cycles of abuse. Tiesu told the crying Yeju not to worry. He would always take care of her. Yeju attempts to seal him for good now, but Tesu reacts just like his brother, and before she could say a word, completely annihilates her. He immediately realizes what he has done, and her memories come flooding into his mind. A spectral hand reaches out Yedu's hand, asking why he did it. Taesu screams out in terror and starts vomiting on the ground. Afterwards, he smashes his head on the ground again and again to forget, but this memory will always be with him. He knows what he must do, so he sends hundreds of versions of himself to search for red portals, and they all begin the work of closing them. This proves impossible at first, but Taesu goes over his limit and actually manages to close the first one. The undead still wish for life and ask the president to save all of them. As they strike Jiang's mother, he tells them not to worry. Unfortunately, she cannot do anything, but he states they are all destined to die anyway. Jiang has fully regenerated, and his mother begins trudging towards him. She remembers him not as the demon standing in front of her, but as her crying child who only wants comfort. She now realizes what she has done and says that she will always love him. But unfortunately, she does not get to finish that sentence as Tayu rips her completely in half before taking Jiang's head off. He has managed to close all of the gates in the world. The one he's in right now is the last one. He pushes Jiang into it and waves him goodbye, as this is the last time they will meet. Jiang utters his name again and again as the portal closes up on him, sealing his fate forever. Just as he lands in the hellish dimension, the beasts waiting for this moment all jump on him, ready to feast on his undying flesh. In his rage, Jiang begins to fight with uncontrolled fury. In his eyes, these fearsome demons are not what they seem. He sees visions of Tesu and rips them all to shreds. Even if giants trample on him, he does not give up. This entire world is out for his death, but his undying hatred will not let him go. 6 years pass. Tesu is remembered as a hero for his actions, but he doesn't care about that. One of the women next to him says that he's being too cold, making him remember Yeju, so he immediately kills her. The other runs away just as Yum gets into the room, who says that doing things like this won't fix his pain. Out of everyone, only she can truly heal him. Tao begins crying, remembering that the undead were cheering for him, but he didn't want that. He goes back to the old playground he used to frequent with Yeju. Her seat was broken, leaving only him. Suddenly, Yuman appeared and comforted him gently. He didn't expect her to become like this when she was helping Jiang, but she actually asks him if he wants to see Jiang again. She notes that even though Jiang killed his mother, he did not fight Taesu. He just let himself be thrown into a blood gate and closed it. Was Taesu afraid because Jiang had defeated all the SSS ranks before him? Taesu pins her to the bed and says that he wants to see him so that he can rip him apart. He reveals he even tried to open a blood gate himself. He was curious to see what Jiang was doing, but he failed. Human wants to tell him something. According to the universal laws, the world will periodically face annihilation. At times like these, the gates appear, and when time passes, these gates will become connected to hell and turn into blood gates. Even though he locked Jiang there, the owner of that place will find him. So he shouldn't worry, as they will meet soon. He should wait until that day comes if he ever wants to meet him. Taesu pins her again and asks who the hell she really is, but she only wonders if he's really that curious. She will satisfy his curiosity with another tidbit of information. Hell's manager is called Pale. Once all the world's gates turn into floodgates, he's the one destined to lead the army that will eradicate the world. He has ruined thousands of worlds until now, but this was the first time that all of the gates had been closed. Creating gates is the law of the universe, and even Pale cannot stop that from happening. However, Jiang, who escaped hell and created fissures in the dimension, combined with Pale's power, could theoretically open gates. So when Jiang fell in again, Pale sensed human mana and tried to find him, but ultimately failed. Jiang had become a monster in the truest sense of the word. Now, though 6 years have passed and Pale has finally found him, a red hue appears outside as the end of the world has begun. Jiang sits down with 2 other people and watches his story. He had a nightmare that his mother was ripped in half and that he had been in hell for 6 years living as a monster. He realizes that even if he received his powers, he could leave and the world would be destroyed as a result. Is he crazy? He just wants to get out of here. He wants to leave so that he can have his revenge. He wants to do the same thing to Taesu. Actually, he wants to do something worse. Something so painful that it keeps Taesu alive. He will rip his guts out and his lungs. Even so, he cannot bring himself to kill so many innocents, but he reflects that he was also innocent once. His father passed away because some guy decided to run a red light. What did he ever do to deserve being beaten by Taeyu, that fucking monster? Everything he did after the 5 years he spent in the Bloodgate was self-defense. He destroyed Japan in his rampage, but he did it so he could save her too. Lucas was different. He kept spouting fucking nonsense about faith. He even had the power to help him, but in the end, he did nothing but try to execute him. Then that Chinese guy showed up and essentially died on his own accord during their fight. If not for all of them, he and his mother might have lived happily ever after. Actually, not really. Who would have thought that Taesu would kill his mother no matter what he did? He would like to be honest with her memory. He has already killed innocents, and now he feels like he wants every single one of them to suffer as he did. The show ends, and Jiang, along with both the real and spectral images of his mother, seems to have enjoyed the twisted recollection. Thanks to Taesu's actions in closing the gates, the world has enjoyed peace for a long time. Everyone is happy without him. But this is not the end for Jiang. All that remains for him is nothing. So it's time for him to go. He looks back at his former self one more time and wishes him a bitter farewell. A gigantic gate tears open in the sky and Jiang, now the angel of hell, descends upon the world once more. He and Taeyu lock eyes before Taeyu begins to split himself into hundreds of clones. This is the final battle. Jiang's army of resentment versus Taeyu and his legion. Their clash begins with a cataclysmic explosion. Jiang charges at Tao, a dragon of hellish energy manifesting from him to spit a corrupting wave into the ground, twisting the very earth. Taeyu creates his own dragon of concentrated mana and charges Jiang, but their strikes are beyond all reasoning as thousands of portals open by the second. A grandmother mourning her son is killed in the crossfire. Others stand dead because of their past actions. And somewhere, a boy, just like his father once did, is saving lives with his newly awakened holy powers. Jiang summons hundreds of portals to grab and ensnare Taesu, but Taesu uses his own powers to summon a vengeful spirit, one that hates Jiang to its very core, to freeze his leg in place. Jiang is suddenly threatened by the spectral forms of all the souls he has killed, and Taesu charges forward, his vision sharp enough to clearly see the lines of weakness around his neck. But Jiang soon grabs the attacking spirits and smashes Taesu into the ice field they now find themselves in. Taeyu gets out as the manifested forms of all the other hunters of the World Hunter Alliance appear beside him. More specifically, however, they are inside him, their absorbed powers creating even further conflict in his fractured mind. Now Jiang fully understands the nature of his ability and laughs maniacally as Taesu smashes him back into the ice. Really? Jiang taunts. You were the one who killed him, right? Your own father. Tao tells him to shut up, but at the same time, a section of his neck flies away, taking him by